The first time Elias Ward stood before Queen of the Dominion, he felt like someone had pushed him into the center of a lightning storm. The throne room around him glowed with blue firelight that danced along the metal walls like living shadows. Tall pillars curled upward like the bones of some ancient creature. Strange scents, sharp and cold, floated in the air. Every sound echoed, making even soft footsteps feel loud. Elias was only a human envoy. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a diplomat by training. He had been chosen because he was calm under pressure, patient with strangers, and willing to speak even when afraid. But he had never imagined he would be standing in front of the most feared ruler in the empire. Queen stood at the far end of the room. Her figure was tall and graceful, covered in silver armor that looked like it had been shaped by the stars themselves. Four glowing eyes watched Elias with a strange intensity. She didn't blink. She didn't shift her weight. She simply studied him as if trying to understand something hidden beneath his skin. No one in her empire stood this close to her unless they had earned her trust, or unless she planned to test them. Elias swallowed hard. Human envoy Elias Ward presenting messages from Earth's council, he said, trying to sound steady. His voice echoed across the hall like it did not belong to him. For a long moment said nothing. She simply stepped forward, each movement slow and controlled, like a predator deciding whether or not to pounce. The room grew quieter. Even the guards, standing like statues along the walls, did not breathe too loudly. "You are smaller than I expected," Queen finally said. Her voice carried a distorted, layered sound as if two tones spoke at once. "Fragile, soft, but your eyes do not look away. Why?" Her question pierced the air like a spear. Elias didn't know what to say. His heart hammered, but he met her gaze. "Because if humanity wants peace," he said, "someone has to look at you honestly. Someone has to try." The moment he spoke, the queen tilted her head in a strange, thoughtful motion. The guards exchanged glances, surprised by her sudden stillness. Something changed in the atmosphere, something Elias couldn't name. Descended from the throne and approached him. Up close, her armor glimmered with thousands of tiny runes that reflected the light. Her shadow fell over him like a dark wing. Elias forced himself not to step back. He had promised himself he would not show fear, even if every instinct in his body screamed otherwise. "You speak differently from the others who came before you," she murmured. "They trembled, they flattered, they begged." "And you hated that," Elias replied without thinking. Her eyes widened just slightly, the smallest crack in her perfectly controlled expression. "Yes," she said, "I despise false strength." Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest. Not comfort, more like understanding. He realized Queen had not invited him to negotiate right away. She was studying him. She wanted to know what kind of human had dared to enter her domain. She turned her back and walked toward the large viewing window behind her throne. Stars stretched across the sky like rivers of white fire. The ship drifted through a quiet part of space, far from any human colony. "Tell me," she said without turning, "why did you come here? The journey is long, the risk is high. Humans do not volunteer for danger so easily." Elias stepped forward just enough so she could hear his voice clearly. "Because someone has to show you we're not afraid of you," he said. "Not in the way you think. Fear doesn't always mean hate." Slowly looked over her shoulder at him. For the first time her expression softened, barely, but clearly. "Strange human," she whispered. "You speak like someone who has lost something." Elias froze. Old memories flickered through him. Lost friends from the early days of conflict. Nights filled with the sound of burning ships. Silence after messages that never came again. "Yes," he said quietly, "I have." The queen observed him for a long, heavy moment. Then she stepped closer again, her eyes glowing brighter. "Good," she said softly, "then you will understand me." Elias felt something shift between them, something fragile, dangerous, and unexpectedly human. It was the beginning of a bond that neither of them could name, and neither of them could ever forget. The corridors of the flagship were vast and silent, except for the occasional hum of engines deep in the ship's core. Elias followed Queen as she moved, her four eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Despite her armor, despite her height, she walked with a careful grace, as if every step mattered. Elias tried to keep his breathing steady, though each beat of his heart reminded him that he was human and completely out of place. He had spent weeks negotiating with alien leaders, but nothing compared to the tension of walking beside a queen who had the power to destroy entire planets. Her presence was overwhelming, yet oddly calming. They reached a chamber far smaller than the throne room, a place meant for private consultation. The walls were smooth, metallic, and glowing faintly, casting soft silver light. Motioned for him to sit. Elias obeyed, uncertain of what was expected. The queen remained standing, her shadow stretching across the room like a silent warning. For several moments, no one spoke. Elias glanced at her, trying to read the expression on her face. There was something different tonight, something human and vulnerable in the way her shoulders slumped slightly under the weight of her armor. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was quieter than he had ever heard it. "Human, I wish to ask something of you." Elia's stomach tightened. He had expected threats, demands, perhaps questions about Earth's military plans, but not this. "I am listening," he said carefully. Her four eyes softened as she stepped closer. "I want to sleep beside you tonight." Elias froze. His mind raced. Sleep beside her. The queen of the Dominion, the ruler who had crushed rebellions before they were fully planned, wanted to lie down in the same room as him. It didn't make sense. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't safe. And yet, the way she said it quietly, almost hesitantly, carried an honesty he couldn't ignore. "Sleep beside me?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "Yes," she said. "No guards, no ritual, only you and me. I wish to experience what it is like to trust another being so completely." Elia's chest tightened further. He had read about traditions, how queens never slept near anyone, not even their closest advisors. Their sleep was a vulnerability, a risk, and she was offering that risk to him. "Why me?" he whispered, almost afraid of the answer. "Because you are different," she said. "Because you speak without fear. Because you look at me and see, not a queen, but something human. And I wish to understand this courage." Elias swallowed hard. He wanted to say no. He wanted to run. But looking at her now, he realized that this wasn't about him being brave. It was about her letting someone in, trusting someone for the first time in centuries. I don't know if I'm worthy," he admitted. His lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile. "You are more worthy than any soldier I have commanded." The queen moved to the resting area, a wide mat layered with soft alien fabrics that glimmered faintly. Elias followed, his steps careful. She lay down first, keeping a small space between them. Her armor remained, but she loosened the heavy plates around her shoulders. Her breathing, normally even and controlled, seemed slower, more human. Elias sat beside her, unsure of what to do. For a long time, they simply sat in silence, listening to the hum of the ship and the soft rhythm of their hearts. "Do you fear me?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Elias paused. He thought about the countless times humans had fled from, the stories of cities destroyed, the warships that could crush planets. But looking at her now, exhausted and vulnerable, he realized that fear was not all he felt. Sometimes, he admitted, but not tonight. The queen's eyes softened further. She shifted slightly closer, careful not to touch, just enough so that the space between them felt smaller. Elias felt warmth spread through him, not fear, not desire, but something far simpler and more human, trust. For the first time, the Queen of the Dominion lay beside another being without walls, without guards, without calculation. And for the first time, Elias understood that even the most terrifying rulers were only human in their own way. The silence stretched, deep and quiet, broken only by the rhythm of their breathing. In that moment, neither spoke of politics, of war, of empires. They spoke with their presence, and it said more than words ever could. And as the hours passed, Elias realized that the night would not be remembered for peace treaties or negotiations. It would be remembered for trust. The trust between a human and an alien queen who dared to sleep beside him. The hours in the quiet chamber stretched longer than Elias had expected. The silver glow of the ship's lights painted the walls in soft, shifting patterns. Outside, the stars moved slowly past the viewport, reminders of the vast emptiness of space. Yet inside that small room, the galaxy felt smaller, as if nothing else existed but him and Queen. Elias tried to rest, but sleep did not come easily. Every creak of the ship made him startle. Every movement of the Queen, slight and careful, made his heart pound. He realized then how fragile this moment was, how strange, how dangerous, and yet how sacred. After a long silence, spoke, her voice a soft vibration that seemed to merge with the hum of the engines. "You breathe differently from your people," she said, almost curiously. Elias turned to look at her. "How do you mean?" "You are smaller, softer, yet your chest rises and falls with courage," she said. "I can sense it even when you do not speak. You carry your fear and your strength in the same motion. That is unique." He didn't know what to say. Praise from her, the most feared being in the quadrant, felt heavier than any metal, yet more terrifying. "Is that good?" he asked finally. "It is human," she replied. Then she paused. "And humans intrigue me." Elias swallowed hard. He realized that for all her power, for all the battles she had fought and the planets she had ruled, she was curious, not with strategy or politics, but with something much simpler, much more human, understanding. A sudden tremor ran through the ship. The floor vibrated under them, making the soft mat shake slightly. Elias sat up instantly. Eyes glowed brighter, scanning the room with precision honed over decades. "Do not fear," she said, her voice firm though her claws flexed slightly. "This ship knows no danger here." Elias nodded, but his mind raced. The tremor reminded him of how fragile life was, even aboard a massive starship. And yet, lay back down, relaxing only slightly, as if daring him to trust the moment as she trusted him. He took a deep breath and decided to speak. "Why are you doing this? Trusting me like this, letting me sit beside you? No one in your empire would ever do it." Her gaze met his, 4 eyes glowing softly. "Because you are honest. You do not pretend. You do not kneel in fear, and you do not try to impress me. You simply exist." Elias felt warmth in his chest. Her words, simple as they were, carried more weight than any battle, more than any praise from human leaders. They were a gift. For hours they sat like that, silent, connected, sharing the quiet. Then Elias shifted slightly, his hand brushing the edge of the mat. Did not move away. Instead, she inched a little closer, a small, deliberate gesture. Not contact, not intimacy, just proximity. He realized then that proximity alone in this moment was a promise of trust, a promise that despite all her power, she chose him. I have never slept beside anyone, she admitted finally, her voice low, almost hesitant. Never family, never advisor, never ally. And yet I feel safe, here, with you. Elia's throat tightened. He had expected fear, maybe curiosity, perhaps even anger. But not this, vulnerability from a queen who had crushed empires. I feel safe too, he whispered, even though you could destroy me. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. It is not destruction I fear, she said. It is the failure to protect those I care for. The words hit him harder than any warning or command ever could. Elias understood then what the queen carried, not just power, but responsibility so heavy it could break her. And in that moment, she allowed him to share a part of it, to bear witness to her humanity. Hours later, when they finally began to drift into uneasy sleep, Elias realized something. The night had shifted everything. Trust, courage, vulnerability had crossed a line between human and alien, soldier and queen. And somehow, in the vast emptiness of space, they had found a connection that neither strategy, nor politics, nor fear could ever break. As the lights dimmed further, and the ship hummed softly beneath them, Elias and slept, not as queen and envoy, not as alien and human, but as two beings daring to trust each other in a galaxy that rarely allowed it. And in that quiet, fragile night, a bond formed that would change both their worlds forever. The peace of the night was broken by alarms that screamed through the corridors like a living thing. Red lights flashed in the soft silver glow, casting jagged shadows across the walls. Elias woke with a start, his heart hammering as the vibration of the ship shook beneath him. Beside him, his eyes snapped open, glowing brighter than before, her body moving with the precision and speed of a predator fully awake. "Human," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "stay behind me. Danger approaches." Elias barely had time to comprehend. The calm, quiet night he had shared with her, the fragile trust they had built, evaporated like mist. His heart sank as he realized the Queen's warning was not ritual, it was real. The ship had been boarded. A faction of rebels from within the Empire had infiltrated the lower decks. Their plan was simple: take him hostage, force to yield, and reclaim power by threatening the life of the human she had trusted. "Why would they attack now?" Elias asked, voice tight with fear. "They believe you are the weakness," said, her claws flexing. "If they harm you, they think they can break me, but they are wrong." The corridors outside the chamber vibrated with the sound of combat. Metal clashed, alarms blared, and distant explosions shook the walls. Moved with lethal grace, stepping over the threshold as though she were weightless, her silver armor gleaming even under the flashing red lights. Elias followed, though he had no weapon, no training for such violence, only the trust she had placed in him and the courage that had brought him this far. The rebels were many, faster than he could track, but was faster still. Her movements were fluid, precise, unstoppable. Every strike she delivered was both shield and warning: stay back, stay alive. Elias realized then the terrifying truth. If the rebels wanted to destroy her, targeting him first was perfect. She could not abandon him, and if he faltered, she could die. "You'll get hurt," Elias shouted as a blast rocked the corridor, sending sparks and shards of metal flying. Her eyes met his, hard and unflinching. "If they touch you, it will be worse than any wound I can bear." They fought their way through the maze of the ship, each corridor more dangerous than the last. The rebels were relentless, armed with weapons designed to pierce armor. Yet skill, honed over centuries, was unmatched. Elias dodged where he could, sometimes slipping behind her when the danger was too close, sometimes trembling at the chaos. A sudden blast sent a panel flying. His shoulder took the brunt of it, her armor dented and smoking. Blood seeped through the cracks. She didn't flinch. She didn't stop. She only gritted her teeth and moved forward, her determination an unbreakable shield around him. He cried, rushing to her side, "You're hurt." "It is nothing," she said sharply, though her movement slowed fractionally. "Move, we have no time for weakness." Elias felt a surge of fear unlike anything he had known. He was just a human, fragile and small. Yet the queen had trusted him, had chosen him beside her. He realized that in this moment he could not be weak, not for her. The rebel commander's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "Queen, surrender the human, end this disgrace." The queen's jaw tightened. "Never," she growled, her voice low and dangerous. "If you wish him, you will face me first." Elias' heart pounded. He understood then the weight of the trust she had placed in him, not as an ally, not as a soldier, but as a being worth protecting. And he knew in that instant that courage was not the absence of fear, it was the decision to act despite it. Together, human and queen, they pressed onward. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the corridors shook. Yet something extraordinary glimmered in Elias' mind. The alien who could crush worlds, the ruler feared by all, had chosen to protect a human with every ounce of her being. And that trust, that choice, changed everything. In the middle of war, in the chaos of a ship under siege, Elias realized that courage, loyalty, and trust were stronger than any weapon, stronger than fear, stronger even than a queen's wrath. Tonight nothing would be the same. The maintenance bay was dimly lit, the walls lined with cables and flickering panels. Smoke lingered in the air from distant explosions, and the metallic scent of scorched circuits stung Elias' nose. He pressed a rag to his bleeding arm, grimacing at the pain, while leaned against the wall, her silver armor scorched and dented, her breathing uneven. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, voice low but sharp. Blood trickled down her side from a gash that he knew would leave a scar. "I had no choice," Elias said, struggling to meet her four glowing eyes. "If I stayed hidden, they would still try to capture me. And you would have to fight them without me distracting them. You shouldn't bear that burden alone." Stared at him, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly her posture softened. "You risked your life for me." "I risked nothing compared to you," he said quietly. "I'm just human. I only act when it matters." For a moment, silence stretched between them, punctuated by distant alarms and the hum of the ship's failing systems. Elias realized then how fragile the queen truly was. Despite her legendary power, despite centuries of battles and wars, she was still vulnerable. And here, in this small bay, she had chosen to fight alongside him, not as a ruler, but as a being who trusted him. Suddenly, the comm panel crackled to life. A rebel commander's voice hissed through the static. "Queen, surrender the human. End this disgrace now or he dies." Claws flexed. Her eyes burned brighter than the flames that licked the corridors outside. "I will never surrender him," she said, her voice low, dangerous, unwavering. "If you want him, come face me." Elias' stomach dropped. He knew what she was thinking. She could take them both on, maybe, but the odds were impossible. And if he failed, she could be gravely injured. And yet, she refused to abandon him. "I can't let them hurt you," Elias whispered, more to himself than to her. Then, without thinking, he made a decision. "I'll go to them." Froze, her eyes widened, four glowing orbs narrowing in disbelief. "No, you cannot." "They won't kill you if I go willingly," he said firmly, though his pulse raced. "I can distract them, give you time to strike, to save your empire, your people. You've already done more than anyone could expect for me. Let me return the favor." For a heartbeat did not move. Her armor creaked as she shifted slightly forward, studying him with an intensity he had never seen. "You would risk your life for me?" she asked. her voice trembling with a mixture of fury, fear, and something softer, something human. "Yes," he said simply, "because last night you trusted me, and I cannot repay that trust with cowardice." Tears, or something like them, welled in her eyes. She took a step closer, brushing the edge of her hand along his shoulder. "Do not make me relive loss again," she whispered, voice breaking. "Not for anyone." Elias placed a hand over hers, feeling the warmth beneath the cold armor. "Then let me fight alongside you, even if apart. Let me be your shield as you have been mine." For a long moment the two stood in the smoky light, human and alien, queen and envoy, bound by trust and courage stronger than any weapon. Then slowly nodded, her glowing eyes flickering with resolve. "Go," she said, "and survive for both our sakes." Elias swallowed hard, then activated the hatch. It hissed open, revealing the rebel-controlled corridor beyond. His pulse raced, fear clawing at him with every step. But he carried something more powerful than fear: trust. Trust in the queen who had slept beside him, in the bond that had formed in the quiet night, in the knowledge that even a human could make a difference. As he stepped into danger, he felt gaze on him, steady and unwavering. And he realized something extraordinary. Courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was choosing to act, to protect, to trust, and to fight for someone even when the universe told you that you were too small, too fragile, too human. And for the first time, Elias understood that even the most powerful alien queen could depend on a human, and that a human could, in return, protect something far greater than himself. The corridor stretched ahead, filled with shadows and uncertainty. But Elias walked forward, not as a scared human, but as a shield for a queen, and as a reminder that bravery could shine even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Elias ran down the narrow corridor, every step echoing against the metallic walls. Sparks flew from exposed conduits above, and smoke curled along the floor in thick tendrils. His heart hammered not only with fear but with determination. Each movement carried the weight of the trust had placed in him. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was someone she believed could make a difference. Around the next corner he spotted her, fought with a ferocity that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Each strike she delivered was precise, each movement flawless. Yet even as she dominated the attackers, Elias could see the strain, the fatigue, the blood staining her armor, the tension in her shoulders. She had pushed herself to the edge, and he knew she would not stop until every threat was eliminated. He shouted, breaking through the smoke. She turned at the sound of his voice, her four eyes locking onto his with a mix of relief and caution. "You made it," she said, her voice low and raw, carrying both surprise and an unspoken warmth. "I promised I'd fight alongside you," Elias said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I won't let you bear this alone." She gave a short, approving nod. Then together they moved through the corridor, covering each other's blind spots. Rebels tried to flank them, but Elias, guided by instinct and trust, intercepted just enough to give the advantage. Each moment of hesitation from the enemy allowed her to strike with devastating efficiency. For a fleeting second, amid the clash and chaos, Elias felt a strange clarity. He realized that this was why she had asked to sleep beside him, why she had trusted him. Not because humans were stronger or faster, but because humanity carried something unique, courage born from choice. Every step, every decision, every heartbeat was theirs to command. And in this moment he understood fully that the queen and the human shared more than survival. They shared purpose. A rebel lunged from the shadows, aiming a blade at side. Without thinking, Elias threw himself in front of her, taking the strike across his shoulder. Pain lanced through him, but he gritted his teeth and stayed standing. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then hardened in determination. She moved like lightning, taking down the attacker before he could strike again. "You are reckless," she said, her voice edged with worry and admiration. "I am human," he replied, wincing as he steadied himself. "Reckless is what we do best when it matters." They pressed forward, reaching the central control room where the rebel commander tried to make his last stand. Elias hesitated, then stepped forward boldly, blocking the door and giving a clear path. The Queen's eyes softened slightly, a rare flicker of emotion shining through her fearsome composure. His voice resonated through the chamber, sharp and commanding. "You will harm no one in my presence. Surrender now or face the consequences." The rebels faltered, realizing the futility of their position. Elias felt the weight of the moment. Their survival depended not on weapons alone, but on trust, courage, and the bond between human and queen. The leader of the rebels dropped his weapon, surrendering with a hiss of defeat. Exhaled, her body relaxing slightly, though every muscle remained tense. She turned to Elias, her eyes glowing warmly, almost softly. "You came back," she whispered, her voice carrying more emotion than Elias had ever heard from her. "You risked everything for me." "I promised," he said simply, "and I always will. Even if it's just being human, I'll do what I can." For a long moment they stood there amidst the wreckage of the battle, connected not by politics or power but by something far deeper: trust, courage, and an unspoken bond that neither war nor fear could break. Elias realized as he looked into her eyes that the Queen's power was not just in her strength, but in the courage to let someone human stand beside her, and realized that humanity, fragile, reckless, unpredictable, could be the strongest force in the galaxy when combined with trust. The alarms quieted, the smoke began to clear, and for the first time that night both felt a moment of calm. They had survived, together. And in that survival, something had shifted, something neither empire nor species could ignore. A bond had been forged, a human and a queen stronger than fear, stronger than war, and perhaps stronger than fate itself. The aftermath of the battle left the flagship but standing. Smoke curled from broken panels, and the hum of damaged engines filled the corridors like a distant heartbeat. Elias moved slowly, his shoulder aching from the earlier strike, yet his steps were steady. He could feel the weight of what had happened, the danger, the trust, and the courage that had carried them through. Appeared beside him, her silver armor dulled with soot and blood, but her posture still regal. Her 4 eyes softened as they fell on him. For a moment, the distance between human and alien, queen and envoy, seemed to vanish. The chaos of the ship melted into a fragile quiet where only they existed. "You survived," she said quietly, almost like a whisper meant only for him. "And you," he replied. "You're still standing. You never doubted me, did you?" She shook her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "No, somehow I knew you would stand by me. That is why I asked you to be near me, even when it was dangerous." Elias felt a warmth spread through him, something deeper than pride, something human. For the first time he understood that trust, true, unshakable trust, was rarer than courage, rarer than victory in battle. And tonight he had earned it. Together they had survived not because of armor, weapons, or strategy alone, but because of a bond that crossed species, a bond that acknowledged the strength in humanity. Extended a clawed hand toward him, not commanding, not testing, but offering. "Come," she said. "We should rest. Tomorrow the Empire will see what humans can do, what courage looks like." Elias took her hand, feeling the subtle warmth beneath her alien skin. He realized that this gesture, small as it seemed, carried a world of meaning. She trusted him completely, and he, in turn, would always honor that trust. They walked together to the private chamber, the same place where the night had begun, where fear had been replaced with fragile trust. The silver glow of the room now seemed gentle, forgiving, as if the ship itself had acknowledged their victory, not just over the rebels, but over doubt, over fear, over limits imposed by species or expectation. Lowered herself onto the mat first, removing more of her armor this time. She was still formidable, still the queen of the Dominion, but there was a human fragility in her movements now, a willingness to reveal herself. Elias sat beside her, shoulder brushing gently against hers. No words were needed. Their presence spoke louder than any declaration of war or peace. For hours they simply rested, letting the quiet settle around them. The galaxy beyond the walls of the ship seemed distant and insignificant. Here, in this small chamber, a human and an alien queen shared something that no weapon could destroy: respect, trust, and a bond forged in fire. "I never imagined," Elias said finally, his voice low, "that a human could mean so much to a queen." His glowing eyes softened, reflecting something almost like wonder. "And I never imagined," she replied, "that a human could teach me what it means to trust fully without fear. You are extraordinary, Elias." He felt a lump in his throat, emotions heavier than any battle he had ever faced. He realized then that humanity, though small and fragile in the cosmic scale, carried a strength that could move worlds, not through power alone, but through courage, compassion, and the willingness to trust. Shifted slightly, bringing herself closer, not for protection, not for dominance, but for connection. Elias felt the warmth, the subtle heartbeat of something rare and sacred. He understood fully that their bond had changed the course of both their lives, perhaps even their species. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with a depth of feeling he could never have predicted. "For what?" he asked. "For trusting a human," she said simply. "For reminding me that strength is not measured by fear or domination, but by courage and the willingness to stand beside another, even when it is impossible." Elias reached out and their hands touched, fingers interlocking in a silent promise. Across the galaxy, the stars moved, indifferent to empires and battles. Yet in this small chamber, the human and the alien queen had proven that trust, courage, and connection could shape destinies beyond worlds. And as they rested together, a human and a queen, Elias realized that this bond, this choice, this courage, was the true victory. Not over the rebels, not over fear, not over the galaxy, but over doubt itself. Tonight, the stars bore witness to something extraordinary. Humanity, fragile yet unyielding, standing side by side with the most powerful being in the quadrant. And in that moment, nothing else mattered.